Welcome, friends. Welcome back to the kitchen. Welcome back to Sunday morning and the Old Cookbook Show. Today we're going to do a recipe out of this cookbook sent in by a viewer. Thank you very much for sending it in. Fish and how to cook it. Issued by the Department of Naval Service, Ottawa. And this is published in 1914. I've been researching this book, trying to figure out a little bit more of its history, and I haven't been able to really hone in on exactly when in 1914 it was published. Canada enters World War I late summer 1914, August 1914. But based on the recipes that are in here and sort of the information that's written at the front, that even if this was published after Canada enters World War I in 1914, all of the recipes in this book are pre-World War I recipes. So the book itself doesn't reflect wartime measures or any sort of rationing or, tightening your belt or any of that sort of thing. In the opening pages, it really talks about how Canadians, especially from sort of that middle part of the country, not ocean adjacent, and it calls out specifically Toronto and Montreal, Canadians weren't eating fish at this point. If you lived in that central region, obviously, if you lived in the coastal regions in the Pacific or the Maritimes, you were eating fish. Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Saskatoon, not a lot of seafood being eaten in those places. And it was trying to get you to eat more seafood. And it was trying to tackle some of the issues about transporting that seafood from where it was fresh to where you could eat it in the central regions of Canada. Book written for me because I don't eat a lot of seafood at home. I don't cook a lot of fish at home. So I've got the pan on. We'll talk a little bit more. I've got the pan on, and we're going to start out with bacon. And we're just going to render this out to get the fat. Now, the recipe specifically calls out salt pork. Here's the reality, 2025, salt pork is not super easy to get where I live. You see it occasionally, and if I was to hunt all day, driving from store to store to store, I would eventually find some salt pork. But it's not a mainline item at most grocery stores. This past summer, I went out, early in the summer, I went out to PEI. Every grocery store I walked into in PEI had salt pork. And then Julie and I went later in the summer, and we flew along the north shore of the St. Lawrence River, through Côte du Nord in Quebec, over to Newfoundland, and every grocery store that we went in from Quebec to Newfoundland had salt pork for sale. It's one of those things that regionally just isn't popular where I am currently. So I'm using bacon. I guess that's a long way to say I'm using bacon because bacon is ubiquitous. Everybody gets it everywhere. The flavor will be slightly different, but I think we'll be okay. I'm going to pull the bacon out at this point. Tells me just to get rid of it. Okay, I will find a use for that bacon. Don't worry about the bacon. We're making clam chowder, and I've chosen this clam chowder recipe because it's different than any clam chowder recipe that I've ever had. It's a very sparse recipe as well. Pan is now off. It's on the stovetop. We've got pork fat in the base of the pan. We're supposed to layer in some sliced potato, and I'm assuming we're supposed to layer in the sliced onion at the same time. So let's get the potato going in here. And I think because it makes no mention of the onion, I'm going to do a layer of potato and then a layer of onion and go back and forth. This is probably a great time to put in some salt and pepper too. Okay, last layer of onions. And I realize now that they kind of do mention the onions in the book. It falls under etc. because I guess specifically calling out the onions was just too much trouble. So I'm supposed to pour in water to cover and then cook 10 minutes. And I imagine this 10 minutes is really just to get the potatoes and the onions started before we add the clams and the milk. And I'm going to put a cover on this just to get it started faster. Once the pot came up to the boil, I took the lid off, and we've been boiling for about 10 minutes now. And I've let a lot of the liquid come off as steam. I don't think we need it. The potatoes are probably 3/4 of the way cooked through. Now we're supposed to add the baby clams and the liquor. So we got the clams in there. And a cup of milk. And so now I'm supposed to cook this just until the potatoes are cooked through. The clams are already cooked in the can. So it's just a matter of getting the potatoes tender and bringing everything up to temperature. One of the interesting things that they say about clams in here is that when this was written, this is kind of amazing to me, 10,000 tons of clams are brought to land here in Canada in 1914. A third of the catch is preserved and presented in cans. Most of the catch, a large part, is used by deep sea fishermen for bait. So they were harvesting clams to use as bait to get other fish, which I find is a wild stat. So this is just on to simmer at this point. I'm not feeling this one.
Hey friends, hey Glen.
Jules.
I'm not sure how to respond to that as I hear him not being so sure about what we're having.
I'm not feeling this one.
Why not?
It just doesn't strike me as...
I mean, it's not pretty,
No, it's
but
not.
it's got potatoes
It's not pretty at all.
and onions
Um,
and something greenish.
Lastly, add 3 or 4 common crackers and serve.
Well, I'll just have my cracker on the side, I guess. Should I start with the cracker? Okay, I'm going to start with the potato.
I wouldn't order this a second time. I wouldn't make this a second time this way.
I don't think it's as disappointing as you thought, though.
No.
It's not horrid.
No, it's
okay,
not.
so here's the thing. He said it was, he predicted horrid, and then he responded with a very bland thing. It is not horrid.
No. It's not exciting. There's nothing in this that jumps out at me and says, oh, this is fantastic. Let's eat several bowls of it.
It's potatoes and onion.
It's
Those are
potato
the
and
dominant
onion.
flavors.
Yeah,
Potatoes and onion.
Potato and onion and a little bit of clam. The salt and pepper comes through a little bit, but it's not, it is very, very plain. It's not pretty.
Not pretty. Might have been, yeah.
Maybe a little less water, a little more cream. A little smoked paprika and and Old Bay spice. See, we've got a shrimp chowder going here. We just tasted this shrimp chowder. And my brain is thinking how wonderful this shrimp chowder was. And how kind of disappointing this is.
That being said, there's nothing fancy in it.
No.
It's easy to put together. You know, if you have access to clams, then this is,
A can of clams is surprisingly inexpensive, right? It was $2.85 for that can of clams, Canadian. So, with a different set of spicing in this, you could really ramp it up into something that I think I would sit down and devour. But as it is, it's just kind of like, eh.
I will say, as someone who's not a big fan of clams, it's actually flavored in a way that I don't feel it. Now, that being said, it's usually the thing, it's textures for clams.
Texture for clams.
So I find in this context, in this setting, the texture doesn't...
Okay, so Julie doesn't like clams. She thinks it's kind of okay. I really like clams, and I think it's kind of meh. So, there you go. Fish and how to cook it. It is a good,
with crackers.
as we say often, it's a good starting base. Spice it just a little bit differently. Maybe add a couple of other things in here, and you've got a relatively decent, quick weeknight meal, or something to take for your lunch the next couple of days afterwards.
I think you could jerk it.
Oh yeah.
No.
Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.
I have crackers.